Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Maritime SoftwareHub, the People podcast. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by my colleague, Ken Adair, who's based in Houston, Texas. Ken, welcome to the show. Great to have you. Put the spotlight on you for a moment and get to hear more about your story. So, for those of people who don't know you, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your background.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thanks, Callum. I know we've been waiting for some time now to get us both on, so super excited. Yeah, a little bit about me. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas. Went to the University of Oklahoma where I studied broadcast journalism. Actually enjoyed that quite a bit. Got paid to travel home and away for football to do media coverage and whatnot. So that's actually a big piece of why I enjoy recruiting was really kind of stepping out of my comfort zone and having to do something so unique to a college experience. From there, after graduating with my bachelor's in broadcast journalism, moved back home to Dallas, where I initially started my recruiting career and have continued that in the Houston Metroplex. I've been here for almost 4 years now, actually. So surprising there, but yeah, it's been great along the way. So super excited to dive in, and yeah, thanks for having me again.
No, my pleasure. And just out of curiosity, what was it like going to university in Oklahoma, I guess, compared to kind of growing up in Dallas?
Yeah, a lot of my Oklahoma friends might not like me saying this, but we it's kind of a little brother to Texas. There's not a huge difference depending on where you're at. They either call themselves this part of the South or part of the Midwest, but it was pretty similar. Actually, a lot of people from Texas, from my area, from Houston area, go to Oklahoma quite a bit. So it was almost as if I never left Texas to some extent. But yeah, it was a great experience. I thought what I really loved about it is it was a large university, but it didn't feel that way. It felt like you were able to find your niche, find your pocket, and really be able to get in tune with what you were looking for in life. And I thought it was a great experience.
Very cool. Yeah, I've never been to Oklahoma. I've obviously been to Texas when we met in person in Houston and Austin. But yeah, sounds like a great city. And from recruiting experience wise, we see a lot of really strong profiles coming out of Oklahoma. And some of our clients, more on the perhaps the weather insight space, seem
For
to be
sure.
based around that area. Lots to
Yeah,
track, I imagine, things.
100% weather. Obviously, meteorology is really big there. Oil and gas, especially both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, have a big energy sector in the university. So yeah, it's a pretty big portion there
Yeah.
coming out of Oklahoma. Yep.
Awesome. Good. Well, today we're going to talk a bit more about obviously your role at Cordell Beaumont, and also your kind of what you're seeing in terms of the hiring activity and general kind of career tips for people within our one of our niches, which is the commodity and energy insight space, where you very much focus on. So, yeah, I guess from your start of your recruiting experience and recruiting career, what type of markets have you worked in over the years, and I guess kind of what are you now focusing on?
Yeah, so I've been all around, for lack of better terms. I started my recruiting career in medical device and software sales, more of a generic from a software related standpoint. We had companies that specialized in finance, companies that specialized in energy, companies in industrial, cybersecurity, and then med device, whether it was diagnostics, pharmaceuticals, trauma, or any sort of large medical equipment as well. So that was initially where my recruiting started. I really enjoyed that. I think it was the best of both worlds, where you kind of have a wide range to go after, but you're still dealing with similar personalities across the board in a sense. So that was really encouraging. Did extremely well there. Transitioned when I made the move to Houston into construction recruiting. I think what really resonated on that, and that was a left curve in a sense, or left curve in a sense, where it wasn't the same type of people with much different personalities, very blue collar, to the point. They didn't really hide what was on their mind, so to speak. So you had to really figure out how to communicate with them at their level because they're so different in how they work, how they operate, and so forth. So just having to structure around that was very eye-opening in that sense. And then that actually led me to what I'm doing now, which is a huge focus, obviously, on the commodities and energy space. And I think it actually groups my previous experiences together because we do obviously our niche is sales related roles, account executives, account managers, customer success, which is what I did for a number of years. But I think a lot of these people being in oil and gas or just in the energy market in general have more of a blue collar personality, or at least they have that type of background. So I think they mesh really well with what I've done in both positions that kind of, for lack of a better term, set up for quite a bit of success.
Yeah, brilliant. And now we're kind of merging those two backgrounds together in a
Yeah.
technology sense, where the data, either the analytics or insights companies that we recruit for, or the software
hmm
companies, they tend to like sales professionals that have either worked in the energy or oil and gas markets, or more likely sold into them before. So it makes sense that that's an area you focus on.
Agree. Yep. No, I think that's you're seeing that quite a bit now is they want somebody who knows how to put that data to work. And I think the best way they've seen that is people who come specifically from that industry that knows what that need looks like and is able to put that solution to the test, so to speak.
Yeah, okay, good. And what was it that appealed about the market to you? I know since you've obviously joined Cordell Beaumont, that's been a good, you've got some early successes which have been excellent in that area. But what is it that you like about this particular market?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I think the number one is there's no one way that this sector works. I think there's a number of ways you can take it, which gives us the ability to be flexible. It gives us the ability to be selective at the same time, right? So that's one thing that attracted me to it. It's a space of unknown, which means that I think that goes hand in hand what I was just meaning in the sense of you can make it what it is, and you can kind of, if you know how to utilize the data and you know where you want that to essentially take your company and be able to build out from there, you have that accessibility. And so with that growth in a market that is ever changing, that's always intriguing to somebody in the recruiting space. I think, and also from a personal standpoint, I enjoy investing into commodities in the energy space. So that's just a bonus for me, being able to kind of have that inner presence in a world that I've already been on the outside looking in. And so that was another piece that I think really intrigued me as I was obviously joining CB.
Yeah, great, that makes sense. Okay, and if we look a bit more at the sort of the hiring point of view from
Mhm.
conversations we're having with either talent teams or more senior managers that are involved in hiring or creating strategy, what type of kind of vacancies are you seeing, or I guess skills gaps are you seeing at the moment in our space?
As far as positions that companies are constantly looking for that maybe they're not getting enough coverage on, or
Yeah, I guess where's the challenge that we're seeing? Because I mean, obviously we have clients that have internal talent teams, and a lot of them fill obviously their roles directly, but typically they come to us with certain types of vacancies. So
yep.
what conversations and what roles are you mainly helping them out with?
Of course. So a lot of the roles that I'm seeing now are much more senior level, whether it's a senior account manager, a senior account executive, or a senior customer success. If I am seeing anything come through that's more base level, it's very niche. Right. So it's not necessarily looking for an account executive that just sells into energy. It's looking for an account executive that sells into LNG and chemicals specifically. So I think that's what I'm seeing quite a bit more of is you're seeing companies that are doing more of the client management roles from a senior standpoint. And then when they're looking to us, it's bringing in those niche capabilities, right? Like LNG, like chemicals, like physicals, anything from a specific standpoint. That's where I think our value has become really beneficial for our clients.
Yeah, exactly. And I think having that combination of technology sales or data sales, as I said before, with that industry specialism or background is super important, especially at the more senior level you get. Um,
Percent. Yeah, and
yeah,
I think what you're seeing a lot, and I alluded to this a few minutes ago, is it's not just about the data. It's can you find a solution with the data is what we're seeing a lot of now is can these candidates actually sell what the solution is, not just the data itself.
yeah, and I guess so. So from a candidate's perspective, then, when they are open to having a conversation and thinking about a job change, are there any kind of common reasons or kind of motivators you see for them being open to a career change at this time?
Well, I think the number one motivator, especially in commodities and energy right now, is security, right? I think there's so much unknown, especially within the climate that we're in today, that a lot of what I'm seeing from candidates is one, actually, let me take a step back. There's two things. One, I think there's a lot of candidates at a lot of companies that are in a saturated market and they have no idea where to look next. And two, I think that combines with the security aspect, right? So I think there's a lot of candidates that feel stuck, and I think there's a lot of candidates that don't know where to go. And so when they're looking to make the move, they're looking for a place that not only is going, hey, we have the opportunity that you're looking for, but can also provide that sense of, hey, we want you to be here for the next 5, 10 years. We understand that the market's changing. We know how to pivot, and we're going to do that with you.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because in great years, like when the market's very buoyant, we've seen a lot of companies hire, pay very high salaries, offer really exciting kind of perks and things. But ultimately, 2 or 3 years later, maybe the market shifted and those hires have all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe people are being let go or there's being restructuring happening. So I think if you can try and really buy into those companies that have a longer term vision for each sales position, let's say, or hire is really key. And I think if I was a candidate right now, weighing up different options of companies to look at, I would be like, yeah, looking at the bigger picture behind the business and their
Yep.
setup. Like, are they kind of private equity kind of backed? Are there key like metrics they have to hit within a certain time frame, or are they more I don't know, realistic kind of projections and targets of what you've got to meet? And all those things play a big part of obviously people's career growth, especially in the mid to senior level when their next move, yeah, it's huge for them and their families and everything.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you look at those levels, it's not just an opportunity move, it's a career move, right? You're not looking for another job that, like you made aware of, where your next 2 or 3 years, you're looking for something new. You want a place that essentially you're going to call home for the next 10, 15, potentially by the time you retire.
Yeah, I agree. And so when I speak to candidates in the mid to senior level, one of the biggest things I like to sell to people or kind of pitch when we talk about an opportunity is the manager and who they'll be working with and who they're reporting to. And I often find that if we have a great rapport or relationship with the hiring manager, it makes life so much more easy for us to sort of yeah, present their company and the opportunity, and immediately there's such strong buy-in from the candidate's perspective.
For
So
sure.
so one of the other reasons why I see people thinking about a change is maybe because maybe their manager they got on really well with has actually left, or they moved on, or maybe they just don't click with their new manager, for example. So I
Yep.
think I think having that kind of that relationship with a great manager is so powerful. So if
Agreed. And I think to add on to that, I think obviously it helps us from our standpoint, right? With just the processes, how they flow, but and I think it also helps in the sense of if you get down to offer stages and the candidate maybe needs that extra nudge and the manager that you're working with, if you don't have a great relationship, they might just walk away from it. But if you have a great relationship, they might also see, hey, look, we're willing to fight. This is something like we trust you because we have that relationship. Let's give a little bit extra effort that maybe we wouldn't if we didn't have that relationship. So obviously, you and I have seen that in our experiences and whatnot. So I think that's just another aspect of relationships obviously matter in what we do from both ends. So yeah, that's a great point.
yeah, yes, companies setting themselves up for hiring the best sales talent. I think if you've got really inspiring and collaborative leaders and sales managers or line managers, it's such a great plus. I know that's probably easier said than done in most cases, especially if you're kind of starting to scale out your commercial teams. But having a really strong, really engaged hiring manager as their first point of contact or along the recruiting life cycle is so key and so helpful
Agree.
in many ways. So, okay, good. Um, yeah, so if we were to talk about those senior sales professionals, I mean, sometimes you might think you've got everything made. You've been in a company for 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden there's something completely out of your hand happens, and you're let go, or maybe you're not sure whether or not that might happen down the line. Like,
Mhm.
are there anything you can perhaps recommend or suggest people do to try and maybe try and mitigate some of the risk of those sort of situations?
Yeah, I would say number one, knowledge is always going to be my first answer to that. Understanding the market as best as possible, not just what you sell and who you sell to, but understanding it from a holistic standpoint, I think is always beneficial. It like I mentioned earlier with companies, having the ability to pivot is probably one of a key aspect to be able to do. Constantly trying to understand clients that you do and don't work with's problems, being able to understand their like tying into the data, right? Understanding how that data can actually play a solution, not just being able to find the data, I think is something that candidates can really focus on who are actually looking to make a move. And then I would say number three is track your success. In sales, you typically don't have to tell candidates that, but that is usually the number one teller between a good candidate and a bad candidate, or not just candidates who have great numbers, but usually if candidates aren't putting their numbers, it's probably a telltale sign. So I would always, whether it's percent to quota, ARR, NAR, whatever that may look like, let companies know how well you're doing, because a lot of times they're just sifting through resumes. And so if they don't see what they need to see, then the likelihood of them wanting to speak with you might also fall apart too. So I would say those are probably my top three: widening your understanding of the market, understanding the problems within that market and how to provide a solution, and then showing the success you've had with doing those.
Yeah, no, very true. Excellent. Yeah, I think, I mean, that's deliberately why we've structured Cordell Beaumont in a way that we primarily work in three markets, which I'm sure our
Hmm.
listeners will know, but it's mainly the maritime software, the commodity insights, and our growing kind of market is the carbon intelligence piece. And we've deliberately chosen those three verticals because they all interconnect in one way or another. And when we speak to, for example, we spoke to a candidate, you and I, Ken, together recently, and they work in a vertical which is not exactly in the same line as our client, but our client is very keen to speak to them because they've got some very interesting kind of insights and perspective. They're still selling software and SaaS at a high level, and they've spoken to similar types of clients, but they're in a completely different business. But again, you can cross over quite nicely. So I always think as long as you don't burn your bridges, always kind of like maintain good contacts with people in different spaces. You never know what can come up down
Yeah,
the line.
no, agreed. Yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it, right? Where you may not necessarily believe it's the right fit, but if you know what you're looking for and you have a good understanding of what your client's looking for as well, sometimes taking that chance, like we did, makes the biggest impact.
Yeah, no, good. Okay, good. And I guess in terms of the market in general, do things sound quite positive in terms of the job flow coming through or what you're hearing? How's it sounding out there?
I think we're in a space of we're getting past the lag of 2025. I think you're going to see companies start really expanding and growing their teams essentially. But I think you're going to see it done in a very specific way, in a sense, not necessarily hiring just pure sellers, but more of, I know I've hit the nail on the head, but solution led, consultative type personalities, type positions, a higher bar for commercial talent. A lot of not just companies, but a lot of candidates I'm talking to are really setting a very high standard with what they need to see in order for them to make the right move, whether it's hiring or whether it's looking to be hired by. And that goes in, with the ability to sell, ability to advise, understanding the market as well. And I think that goes back and forth or back to not just being a pure seller, but being able to provide the solution and have that consultative approach. And then, within infrastructure, energy, I think with AI being included in that, they're just becoming such a central piece to client strategy that it's becoming, extremely, in a sense, scarce. And so I think that's where you're going to start to see companies really start pushing for that specific candidate profile and being a little bit more detailed with what they, or not necessarily detailed, but focused on exactly what they bring on board.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely, like seeing it less kind of transactional sales hires, more consultative, as you say. And again, that often kind of links quite nicely to whether it's software sales, where there's kind of long implementations or a long decision making process of sales cycles, I guess. That crosses over nicely to what we see on the maritime software space as well. So I think it just not just the commodity market, but also other sectors. Um,
Agreed.
Brilliant. Good. Okay. Well, I guess any other kind of any insights you'd like to share about either from a candidate's perspective or perhaps a hiring manager that's looking to build a commercial team at the moment?
Would say I would say from a client standpoint, if you're a hiring manager that is looking to build out a team, whether it's here in the States or whether it's elsewhere, I would say the biggest thing I'm running into is clients not being as open-minded to, as much as I stressed, hey, we want to be specific, we want to be specific. I think that comes to when you actually decide to pick, but when it comes to speaking to candidates and actually seeing what's out there, I think staying open-minded from that standpoint is what is necessary right now because I think there's a lot of good candidates being missed because maybe their resume doesn't read right or maybe that they didn't put the right wording and so it looked off. And I think companies need to maybe take a little bit of a step back and go, okay, who are we really trying to bring on? And let's figure out where to find that at.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess even little things like if companies are insistent on people being in the office a certain amount of days,
Yep,
for the right person, can you relax that? I don't know. Obviously, you don't want to be fair across the team, essentially. So it's a difficult one. But
agreed. Yeah,
but
and
yeah,
that's actually something I've seen quite a bit of is companies are starting to go back to either that hybrid or in person. So that should be, we might see something open up here soon with those changes being made.
yeah. No, I think so. More and more. I mean, nearly every role we're working on now is has an element of being office based. I'd say, unless it's fully remote, they might still need to go occasionally to the office, but it's more and more happening more regularly. And I think from my point of view, teams that are starting to build, whether they're building up a sales team or just refreshing their sales team or making some changes, and I think the clearest thing to have is a structured. It sounds obvious, but like a salary benchmark plan and a commission structure. That's one of the key things we hear when people are looking to leave is that maybe their commission structure's changed or it's unclear or it's just not very competitive. So I think having that in place from the very beginning and well communicated across your even at interview stage. So for example, whenever we speak to candidates, we nearly always ask them, for example, like obviously we talk about their current salaries as long as we're able
Mhm.
to in the state and what's their on target earnings, how do they do in the previous year, and if we can't articulate the potential on target earnings in the new role, it's very hard for them to kind of assess whether or not financially it's a good move for them. Um, and then also making sure that if there is a big kind of commission proportion component, like are the targets achievable? So having evidence of that is really, really helpful as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I think having a structure that isn't easily fluctuated, like you alluded to earlier, where companies are you're because I've spoken probably candidates with the similar issues where their commission structure changed or their bonus plan changed to where instead of being paid out quarterly, it's paid out at the end of the year and they're actually losing money. So I think that goes back to that sense of security, right? It's not just, hey, am I going to be able to work here for a long time? There's so many aspects of it. How is my paycheck going to be affected by these changes? So it just goes back to making sure you're stable and actually providing that sense of security that a lot of candidates just don't feel right now.
Yeah, and then if you have that piece of having a really solid kind of management team that the candidates want to work with, and also the technology or the platform you're selling is where you've told people it is basically. There's no kind of deceit about the development of the product you're selling. That's another reason why candidates do often leave. That sometimes it's the founders or the decision makers might say that the solution is further along than they're led to believe or less
Yeah,
further along. So I think being upfront about the technology is really, really powerful as well.
agreed. Yeah, I've talked to a number of candidates where they were created a, provided a vision and then that vision kept getting pushed and pushed. And that's unfortunately not only how you lose candidates, but how you consistently aren't able to get candidates because word of mouth continues to build and it sets up the perspective people have of you in such a negative light that you just kind of shot yourself in the foot, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, no, good. Well, I guess on a like a flip side, I guess in terms of the best candidates that you see, I know we shouldn't kind of perhaps phrase them like that, but in terms of
Yeah.
candidates that you speak to, um, apologies, what stands out for you whenever you see a resume or like someone's LinkedIn profile, and you think, wow, that looks like even if there's a vacancy or not, kind of like really kind of catches your attention.
Yeah, I think what catches my attention is how specific and detailed they are in their descriptions of what they're doing within their roles. That's typically when they're boastful about what they've done on their LinkedIn. That's always a good keynote. But I think also having the key words, that's always a powerful aspect. A lot of candidates, I think, get passed up because they don't have the specific key words. For instance, with us, if we're looking for somebody in the LNG, well, it's really tough to differentiate who's selling into that space if all they have is energy or oil and gas. So I think that is a big key component is having those key words on what you sell into and the types of roles that you would be engaged with if you were to look. So those are probably the two things that really stand out is a really formulated LinkedIn, but that has the actual keywords and not just a bunch of generic statements that they put in bullet points.
Great. Yeah, very. I hadn't thought about that. That's really important. Yeah, and I think also continuity in roles is really important that we see, especially in the US. People like this. From what I see, teams to stay there for a long time and evolve and not moving around too often. So I always suggest if you can stay in somewhere at least 1 year before you move on, is always it always just looks strong on your profile. And if obviously things happen out of your hands, as long as you have a good explanation about why
For
what
sure.
happened, and people move all the time, so there's no harm in doing that. But I think if there's a pattern where each role it's 6 or 7 months, then obviously that looks slightly different. So
Yep.
I, I think continuity, as you said, like ideally clear evidence of the markets that you're selling in or working in is really really
Hmm.
important. Yeah, and just anything else is just being professional and ideally being known in the market. I know it sounds obvious, but you want your competitors to ideally know who you are if possible.
Hmm.
um, because then you've got internal kind of reference points before you even apply for a role or whatever. They might think of you as like a real kind of target hire. So it
Yep.
goes back to networking, not burning any bridges, and just being known in your space is so powerful.
Agreed. Yeah, I think yeah, just hitting that on the head, awareness and exposure. I mean, they're probably the most important because if no one really knows, then nobody can really have an input or be a part of it, right? So I think that awareness, that exposure, that constant just communication in a sense is as powerful as anything else.
Yeah. And I think if someone says, okay, well, I've got that on my LinkedIn profile, I've listed my markets. Maybe some people might even put some of those statistics on their profile, like their revenue, like what they actually help generate. And obviously, you're not every candidate will do that because some of it's sensitive data, which is fair. But I guess if they're still struggling to find opportunities or they're just not getting interviews, are there anything you can suggest from that point of view? I guess whether it's partnering, obviously, with a recruiter like us, or other avenues that they might be able to pursue.
So I would say, I mean, yeah, the easy answer is just to reach out to recruiters in that space. That's I genuinely think people don't understand how much value agencies bring in regards to the constant reach out and in regards to how much exposure we have to the market, the contacts and the connections and who we're speaking to, I think is always beneficial. And we provide a variety, right? That's versus applying directly, going through a funnel and hoping that it gets picked versus us who we're sending it directly to the hiring managers. We're the ones scheduling everything. You're not having to wait around. So I think going with an agency is in my opinion the always best way to go. If you're continuing to want to do it on your own, I would say reach out to people within the company directly, sales managers, hiring managers, whether it's just a quick message, hey, just wanted to see if you were reaching out or just wanted to see if you were hiring, or whether it's, hey, here's my CV, I'm looking. So there's, direct access in the way I would say you're in sales. Treat it like you would treat a client. Like go after them, be consistent, be persistent. If you get a no, great, try again. So I would say those are the two ways. Either find a recruiter in your space or reach out directly to the hiring or who looks to be as a hiring manager within that organization.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think just to add to that is even again, network, go to the events as much as
Yep.
possible. I know it can obviously be in the US, obviously involve a bit of traveling and things, which is very common in our markets. But just get your face known, like your name known out there. And obviously on our point of view, our side, we don't necessarily always advertise the vacancies that we're working on. In fact, more often than not, we don't. So please don't think if recruiters don't necessarily have jobs advertised, there's nothing they're working on. So it still helps just having a conversation. Most of the time, we are speaking to candidates where we don't have a live role. I'll just be transparent with you, and we will tell the candidate that look, we want to have an exploratory call with you, understand the type of opportunities that might interest you, the type of companies that will interest you in the future. So now we know each other, and essentially, when the right opportunity comes along, we can come to you straight away, type of thing.
I
Um,
agree.
and obviously on the other side, there will be live vacancies that we'll talk to them about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I just had this morning had a senior candidate reach out. I connected with him on LinkedIn, and he immediately messaged and said, "Hey, just out of curiosity, are you guys working on any live vacancies?" So it's as simple as that. I responded. We have a connected call for Thursday, and we're all set.
so, and then on the flip side of that is on the hiring point of view, we know that companies are not always looking to hire. That they may not have the budget or the timing might be off. But the reason why we're having these speculative conversations with candidates every single day is that we can then ad hoc kind of think of profiles that might be a fit for that team, or as and when we see someone really strong, we can then obviously with the candidate's permission check if that company might interest them or and send
Yep.
them to the client. So it doesn't always have to be a vacancy there. We're trying to essentially matchmake with hiring teams and candidates who we think could be a good fit.
And when it comes to specking and sending candidates to blindly and to in a sense, I always ask and I let them know, hey, before I send you anywhere, I'll confirm with you about opportunities. That way we're staying transparent. You know where your name's being put and no one's being backdoored. It just that transparency and that helps when you need to be able to trust the candidate because a lot of times candidates will do things that you necessarily as a recruiter wouldn't suggest, whether it's applying directly or whatever that may be from your standpoint. And so I think being transparent on the front end from a recruiter aspect really
Mm.
helps throughout the entire process of them trusting you, whether it's, hey, let's do this debrief right after the first interview, or hey, I just got the offer. I want to go through it before I make a decision. Those things matter, but you have to create that trust in the beginning, and that comes with transparency, treating them like they're not a candidate and your recruiter, but treating them like you're trying to help them and you can actually help.
Yeah, that's so important. And you added a few really good points there we haven't touched upon is for helping people land jobs. Yeah, okay, great. They might see jobs that they apply to and start interviewing at, but to actually get from the first interview to the offer and to the actual landing the role, it is still very complex, obviously, to make you have to perform at the interview. But even things like just making sure that you're aligned on salary expectations,
Yeah.
any after every interview, like Ken said, is having that debrief conversation with a recruiter or even the talent contact
Hmm.
within a company, relaying perhaps that there might be sometimes be questions that maybe you didn't get a chance to speak or run through with the hiring manager or the interviewer. So it's our job as recruiters to make sure that we always follow up with candidates. We understand what was discussed. If there's any remaining questions that we want to basically inform the client of, so they know that to run through them with the candidate, ideally before an offer is put out. Um, and then, yeah, on our side of point of view, it's just the candidates that are transparent about their thoughts about the role. If they have other interview processes running, it's so helpful if we're all transparent and we can make sure we get the result we're all
For
looking
sure.
for.
Exactly. And I think you and I both have quite a bit of experiences on both ends, right? Where you have a candidate that shows you how much they trust you and how much they actually respect and believe what you do is helping. And then vice versa, you've had candidates that have no idea what you do and don't really believe in the values. So I think doing your part, holding yourself accountable. I think that's also a component, right? Of doing those debriefs, sending those emails after interviews and so forth. That's the accountability piece for everybody, where it allows us to cover our basis, where, hey, we're providing all the information necessary. It allows us to hold candidates accountable with, hey, here's what you told us directly. We're putting this in front of everybody. And then it allows us to keep the client accountable, saying, hey, you've had every step of the way to be able to push back or say, hey, actually that salary is too high, or no, we actually didn't have the same. So it's allowing everybody to stay on the same page and holding everybody accountable through each step of the process.
Yeah, and ultimately just getting a win-win for everyone, really, which is the goal. So that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yep. I
Awesome,
agree.
Ken. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, really appreciate your obviously what you how you've been working with the team so far and everything you've been doing. It's been fantastic. Um, I guess obviously if anyone would like to reach out to you and if they want to any questions regarding what we talked about today, or even if they're looking or considering a new role, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me directly on my LinkedIn. You can reach out via email at ken@cordellbeaumont.com, or you can reach out via phone call or text as well at 972-268-3156.
Very good. Awesome. And then before I let you go, I always like to ask a few more questions about people's
Of course.
hobbies and what they like to get up to in their own time. So, outside of recruitment, when you have a spare moment, what do you like to spend your time doing?
So in a normal week, I'm gonna sound like a bit of a douche. I'm at the gym for usually 6 to 7 days a week. I think you and I hold that in common. Um,
I think
I
you're leading the way with that. I'm slacking a bit at the moment, but
I actually just started a little bit of a new regimen. I'm trying to see how my body adjusts. So we'll see how that goes. I'll keep you updated.
okay.
That, like I've talked, hiking is, which I'm sure people who follow me on LinkedIn see that quite a bit. I enjoy hiking as much as the next person, whether it's the Rockies, Smokies. That's Smokies are my next one. Mount Rainier up in Washington. So yeah, that working out, hike, anything outdoors wise, I'm all for. And then I actually really enjoy cooking. I like being able to combine flavors from different parts of the world and put them together. That's actually my favorite style of restaurants I go to. So I enjoy looking up new recipes, being the person that cooks on Thanksgiving or Christmas. That's always been something I enjoy. So yeah, I would say, and like every other Texan, watching football. But other than
Great.
that, yeah, I'm not too complicated of a human.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ken. And yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, and we'll speak again soon.